نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون وقال تعالى أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها. Dear brothers, respected sisters, when we look at what is happening around the world, whether it's the genocide or it's support, different types of crime, different types of abuse and oppression, it can both enrage a person and at the same time, it can create a lot of sadness. Any person of sound fitrah wants there to be justice. And us, especially as Muslims, we want justice. We worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and one of the Asma al-Husna of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Adl, the one who is just. And naturally, we want justice. But we think, what can be justice to someone who commits such gross crimes and injustice? What do? Do you make a person pay a fine? Do you put them in prison? Do you vote them out of office? What punishment do you give someone that's going to be a proper form of justice for what they have done? And then to make matters worse, a lot of people go unpunished and they don't face the justice that they deserve to face. What we must understand is that while there may be some consequences in this dunya, there may be some retribution for those who commit wrongs in this dunya, true justice is only in the hereafter. True justice can only happen in the hereafter. Justice for all the pain, the sadness, the hurt, the oppression, whatever a person was made to go through, that true and complete justice is not possible in the dunya. It can only happen truly in the hereafter. And on that day when that justice will be served, there will be no escape. There will be no lies. There will be no absence of witnesses, inability to prove, and so on. Rather, on that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring forth undeniable proofs. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ensure that there is testimony for everything that needs to be established. And that whatever injustice may have been done in this dunya, publicly or privately, with whatever confidentiality that may have been done, on that day it will be exposed and there will be proof for it and there will be witnesses for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this in different places in the Quran. One of them is in the surah that I recited in the beginning, in the 30th juz, in Surah Al-Zalzala. Zalzala meaning earthquake. And Anas and Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhum, they mention that the hadith in Surah Tirmidhi, that Surah Al-Zalzala equals half of the Quran. That it's a short Madani surah with only 8 verses, but it provides details of what's going to happen on the Day of Judgment. And it contains within it for us both hope and fear. The state that we're supposed to be in between, khawf and raja, fear and hope. It contains both within it for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the surah that إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا. That when the earth will be trembled with this quake, and the earth will bring forth its burdens, and the person will say, what has happened to it? The earth on that day will shake from its core. When the trumpet is blown, it will shake on the day of judgment. And here Allah mentions, إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا. The word is brought a second time in different form, but in the masdar form it's brought a second time to show severity, meaning that it's not just that it's going to shake, but it's going to shake severely on that day. And Allah mentions that it will then bring forth its burden, its athqal, it's mentioned in the Quran. Now, thaqalain, the athqal, is sometimes meant to refer to the human and the jinn, that they will be brought forth. Other Mufassirun have mentioned that all of the deceased who are buried in the earth, on that day they'll be brought forth, they'll be brought out. That the earth on that day will take everyone out. And other Mufassirun have mentioned that it also refers to all the treasures and the mal that is in the dunya will be taken out and will be brought outside, and it will be left unattended, meaning nobody will care for whatever riches and the treasures and the wealth and the gold and whatever else in the dunya that people used to care about. On that day, it will be brought out and no one will be caring about it at all. Okay? That it will be worthless in the hereafter. The hadith in Sahih Muslim that the Prophet mentioned that a murderer will come on the day of judgment and he'll see the wealth and he will say that, is this for which I killed? That the one who broke ties of kinship, the one who broke off relationships with family, that person will look at the wealth on the day of judgment and will say, it's for this that I broke ties of kinship? That on that day no one will care about all these insignificant matters in the dunya that people, because of which disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on that day it will be brought forth and no one will care about it. And they'll realize that that's not where a person's focus and attention should have been. That they will regret and realize what a terrible trade-off that they made. And on that day, all of the deceased will be brought forth out of their graves when a subsequent trumpet is blown. And people will start to ask that why is the earth shaking like this? And some of the Mufassirun mentioned that this is general for all people, that the Muslims and the non-Muslims, everyone on that day will be questioning about what is causing the earth to do this. And some of the other Mufassirun mentioned that this is going to be specific to the non-Muslims because the Muslims, with their iman, recognize the signs of the Day of Judgment and they will recognize what is happening, that it is now the Day of Judgment. Allah SWT mentions that يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا. That day it will describe all of its happenings because its Lord has commanded it to do so. That the earth will mention all the good that took place on it as well as all the bad that took place on it on that day. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu mentions that the Prophet mentioned the hadith in Sunan Tirmidhi that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited, قرأ Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam هذه الآية يومئذ تحدث أخبارها قال أتدرون ما أخبارها. That do you know what is this thing that's going to mention about on the Day of Judgment after reciting this ayah? So the Sahaba radiallahu anhu mentioned, they said, قالوا الله ورسوله أعلم. That Allah and His Messenger know best. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them that فإن أخبارها أن تشهد على كل عبد أو أمة بما عمل على ظهرها تقول عمل يوم كذا كذا وكذا. That on that day, what it will inform is it will bear testimony on every man and woman and will say about what they did. And it will say that the earth will say that on this date, this person did such and such an act. That the earth will give that testimony. And the ulama and the mufassirun mention about how is the earth going to speak? Because it's an inanimate object, right? The earth can't speak, so they say, how will the earth speak on the Day of Judgment? And the mufassirun have mentioned different matters in their tafsir. Some have said that it will be brought in the form of an animal that will be made to speak in the shape of an animal. Some have said that no, its proofs itself will be such that it will take place of actual speech. And other mufassirun mentioned that Allah will just make it speak in whatever manner that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deems for it to speak, and Allahu a'lam with that. Okay? And there's nothing hard in believing that Allah will cause the earth to speak, because it's not specific to just the earth that Allah will make speak on the Day of Judgment. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause things that cannot speak in this dunya, Allah will cause them to speak on the Day of Judgment. Okay? In a manner that it will be impossible for anyone to refute the truth. Okay? That enough of the lies of people that they say on that day, Allah will bring forth people's own limbs to bear testimony against them. Allah subhanahu mentions, اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون. That on that day we will seal their mouths and their hands will speak to us and their feet will bear testimony for what they have earned. That the mouths will be sealed and their hands and their feet will now bear testimony for what that person does. How can a person now refute that? And it should make a person realize that there is simply no escaping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That there's simply no escaping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no matter what a person does, where they do it, how they do it, one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always watching. Alam ya'lam bi anna Allah yara? That does he not know that Allah is watching? That the angels are writing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ إِذْ يَتَلَقَّى الْمُتَلَقِّيَانِ عَنِ الْيَمِينِ وَعَنِ الشِّمَالِ قَعِيدٌ مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. Allah mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the human and Allah knows what our own souls mention to us. And He says that we are closer to the humans, we are closer, Allah mentions Allah is closer to us than our own jugular veins. And that Allah has created the two angels on our right, on our left, that there is nothing that comes out from our mouth except that they are being recorded. مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. There's somebody watching and recording that. Allah is watching. The angels are recording. The earth is witnessing, as Allah mentioned in the surah, that Allah mentioned in the surah that يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا. And Allah mentions that a person's own tongues and their hands and their feet and even their own skin will bear testimony. Allah mentions, يَوْمَ تَشْهَدُ عَلَيْهِمْ أَلْسِنَتُهُمْ وَأَيْدِيهِمْ وَأَرْجُلُهُم بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. That on that day when their tongues, their hands, their feet will bear testimony on what they used to do. And Allah mentions that حَتَّى إِذَا مَا جَاءُوهَا شَهِدَ عَلَيْهِمْ سَمْعُهُمْ وَأَبْصَارُهُم وَجُلُودُهُم بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. That on that day that their own hearing, their hearing, their eyes, their own skin will bear testimony against them. And Allah also mentions that قَالُوا لِجُلُودِهِمْ لِمَا شَهِدْتُمْ عَلَيْنَا. That people will say to their own skins, it's their own skin, they will say that why have you borne witness against us? Like you are our skin. Why have you given witness and testimony against us? And now the skin will reply and will say, قَالُوا أَنْتَقَنَ اللَّهُ الَّذِي أَنْتَقَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. That the one who has caused everything to speak has caused us to speak. That this was a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that there is no choice in the matter. That on that day, there's no refuting what is the truth and what is a person's actions in this dunya. Allah also mentions that يَوْمَئِذٍ يَصْدُرُ النَّاسُ أَشْتَاتَهُم أو يَوْمَئِذٍ يَصْدُرُ النَّاسُ أَشْتَاتًا لِيُرَوْا أَعْمَالَهُم فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. That day people will come in different groups so that they may be shown the fruits of their deeds. People on that day will be in groups. Some people to the right going to Jannah and some people to the left going to the hellfire. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from being amongst them. And Allah mentions, so whoever does any good act, even the weight of a particle will see it, and whoever does evil, even to the weight of a particle will see it. Okay? That on that day, everyone will lament their deeds. Rasulullah mentioned, Imam Qurtubi mentioned this in his tafsir, that he said that مَا مِنْ أَحَدٍ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ إِلَّا وَيَلُومُ نَفْسَهُ. That there will not be a single person except that they're going to blame themselves. That فَإِنْ كَانَ مُحْسِنًا, if that person was good, he will say that لِمَا لَا إِزْدَدْتُ إِحْسَانًا. That why did I not do more good deeds? And فَإِنْ كَانَ غَيْرَ ذَلِكَ, and if he wasn't from those who used to do good deeds, then he will say that لِمَا لَا نَزَعْتُ عَنِ الْمَعَاصِي, why did I not abstain from disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That on that day, nothing will go unaccounted for. وَوُضِعَ الْكِتَابُ فَتَرَى الْمُجْرِمِينَ مُشْفِقِينَ مما فيه ويقولون ما لهذا الكتاب لا يغادر صغيرة يقولون ويلتنا ما لهذا الكتاب لا يغادر صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا أحصاها ووجدوا ما عملوا حاضرا ولا يظلم ربك أحدا. That on that day when the book will be given, and people are going to say, what's with this book? It has left nothing. There's nothing small, nothing large, except that it encompasses it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring all that as witnesses to them. Okay? And here Allah mentions mithqala dharrah. This is, the particle. The ulama explained that if a person touches sand and you lift your hand, those particles, even that much will be brought. Even that much. We need to keep in mind, these are the verses that give us both hope that whatever good deed that we did, regardless if people saw it, appreciated it, whatever, it doesn't matter. Any good deed that we did in this dunya, Allah will make us see that, the benefits of that in the hereafter. But it gives also a person fear that if there's anything wrong that a person does, then may Allah save us, it could be brought. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't forgive, then it could be brought on that day against us as well. This is why Ibrahim alayhi salam used to make the dua, وَلَا تُخْزِنِي يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. That do not disgrace me on that day when wealth and children will be of no benefit, except for those who come with a clean heart. I want to end and to say that we can see that in this dunya there may be some retribution, but there's no full justice. When we see and we are saddened by those who do wrong and they get away with it, we should know that justice will not be escaped, that justice will be served. If not in this dunya, justice truly will be in the hereafter. But at the same time, it's not for us to just always look outward and look at what other people are doing. We need to look inward as well. And we need to look at us. We recognize the wrongs that are happening in the dunya, but we also need to look inward and see, are there wrongs that are within us as well? Because if there are wrongs that are within us, everyone will have to come to the day of judgment, and we need to be concerned about ourselves of what is going to be brought in our favor on that day, and may Allah forbid what will be brought against us on that day. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to see the retribution of those who are oppressing in this dunya and grant the mazlumeen justice on the day of judgment, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also allows us to see our own good deeds on the day of judgment, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives any of our shortcomings and our sins that we have committed, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saves us from humiliation on that day. وقولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي هدى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله وصحبه الذين اجتبى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وذل الشرك والمشركين ودمر أعداءك أعداء الدين اللهم انصر المسلمين المستضعفين في كل مكان اللهم انصر المسلمين المستضعفين في كل مكان اللهم انصر المسلمين المستضعفين في كل مكان اللهم انصر المجاهدين الذين يجاهدون في سبيلك في كل مكان اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين اللهم اشف مرضانا وارحم موتانا وتقبل شهداءنا اللهم عليك بأعدائك وأعداء المسلمين اللهم إنا نجعلك في نحورهم ونعوذ بك من شرورهم اللهم اكفناهم بما شئت اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين والدنيا والآخرة عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون أقيموا الصلاة